Hey guys, so I'm back with another video, and today I'll be showing you how to install a backup camera and the rear view mirror in a Hyundai Sonata. So as you've seen in my last video, this is the mirror and the camera I ended up selecting. And let's just take a look at this camera a little bit closer, because I find some of these translations pretty hilarious, but hey, what do you expect for 20 bucks? So here's the camera, and you can see it's already mounted to the little license plate mount. And one thing I actually did before I installed it was I hooked it up to my TV just to make sure the picture was good. And I was actually very surprised. It has four very bright LED lights that come on whenever the power is given to the camera. So I installed this camera by myself and unfortunately wasn't able to record video of all the actual steps. However, I will refer you to this video, which I'll put a link in the video description. And it did a pretty good job at showing the actual step-by-step process. The quality's not the best, but between that and these pictures I'm about to show you, you should get a pretty good idea of how to do it. So this is where we'll be installing the camera, and in order to get access to where the wires are going to run for this, we actually need to open the trunk, take off this black fabric piece that will give us access to where all the screws are. And once we take out all these screws, this bar will come off. Now there is a silver trim piece on here. Be very careful removing that. It's pretty easy to snap if you're not careful. Once you get that off, you'll be able to remove one of the license plate bulbs. Just take the bulb out, screw on the new piece with the camera attached to it, and then just run your cable along the other cable location from the bulb and the trunk release and whatnot. Just be careful not to pinch the cable or snag it anywhere. Take your time, and at the end, you'll see these two cables will run through this little rubber grommet. Now the rubber grommet is very important because that's going to keep the inside and outside of the trunk sealed so that there isn't any kind of water or dust or anything that gets in there. You will need to cut a little section of the end of this grommet off to kind of open up the space a little bit more, because you're going to be fitting in two cables now instead of just one. And then it's just a matter of putting everything back together in reverse order, just like when you took it apart. So now we need to plug in the cables, and there's just two of them for this. The first one is this red power cable, and that's going to be plugged into two places. The black wire is your ground, so you'll want to plug that into something that is metal. You can just screw that down like this. And then the red wire you are going to tap into your reverse lamp. And that way, when you put your car into reverse and your reverse lights turn on, that will also give power to your camera, and that way your camera isn't being powered up all the time. And the yellow cable is for video, just like an old VCR or DVD player. This cable connects up with the extension cable that came with your mirror or monitor. So go ahead and connect that up, and you'll need to run that across the trunk and to the front of the vehicle. So at this point you should have the video cable ran to the front of the vehicle, and now we'll talk about installing the mirror, which we'll be using to view the signal. To remove the factory mirror, you'll need a Torx screwdriver to remove this screw, and then it just simply slides straight off. It's very easy. Depending on the mirror you purchased, you may or may not need an adapter plate connected. In my case, I didn't. It was a direct fit and it worked right away. So here's a picture comparing the factory mirror on the right and the aftermarket mirror on the left. And as you can see, they look very similar. They're also very similar in size. The mount, however, is a little bit more bulkier. At first I was kind of disappointed because it seemed like the mirror was sticking out too far and it was right in my face. But it's pretty adjustable with that little ball mount. You can get it pretty much in about the same position as the factory mirror. The other difference is the factory mirror has the cables and power and whatnot plug into it. You can simply remove that plug and just kind of stuff it up in your headliner. And the cables for this mirror are permanently attached. So by now you should have the power and the video and everything connected. So go ahead and start up your car, put it in reverse, and the picture from the camera should come up on the screen. Now one of the other features of this particular mirror is that it has a temperature and compass display, which did work. However, it looked like it was kind of cut off. If you looked at it at a different angle, you were able to see everything just fine. It's just the position of it was kind of too low, and the viewable area that you could actually see the numbers just didn't line up. I contacted the manufacturer and they were pretty easy to work with, especially since it was within the first 30 days that I purchased it from Amazon. They basically just had me swap it out. And the second one wasn't perfect, but it was much better than the first one, so I figured it was good enough and I decided to keep it. So at this point I had everything up and running, and I used it this way for at least 6 months or so. But over time I realized there was a few downsides of this setup, and I looked to try and improve it. The first problem I was having is with the parking lines. This particular camera has these red, yellow, green parking lines hard-coded on the picture. And the problem with that is you can't adjust them. Depending on if your camera is installed high or low, and the viewing angle and whatnot, you're not really able to adjust the parking lines for your specific vehicle. Now, the mirror I purchased does have adjustable parking lines. However, if I turn those on, I would just end up with two different sets of parking lines, which is really confusing. So, one of the things that I think I would look for in the next camera would be one that either has adjustable parking lines within the camera, or the option to turn off the parking lines so that I can use the adjustable ones within the mirror. Now, the other problem I was having with this camera is the field of view is very narrow, and it was advertised to be 170 degrees, but there's just no way it's actually that wide. It's probably more like 90 degrees, or the equivalent view you would get from maybe a smartphone camera, which is okay. I mean, you can see what's behind you, but if you're backing into tight spaces and doing parallel parking and things like that, you'll want to have a wider field of view, because that will just help you, kind of judge your distance of, how far away you are from things like a curb. So I definitely wanted to find a camera with a wider field of view. So I looked all over the internet to try and find a inexpensive camera but would have both a wider field of view and adjustable parking lines, or the ability to turn them off. And I had a really difficult time because pretty much every camera was claiming that it had this 170 degree viewing angle, even though it was clearly false. Then I figured out what to look for, because I had recently rented a car, which of course was a brand new car with a factory backup camera built in, and the field of view on that camera was much wider, and it was actually exactly what I was looking for. I inspected that camera and I noticed that the lens itself was very round, like a dome. It was very spherical and rounded, and I basically equated that the more rounded the lens is, the wider angle field of view it's going to have. So I then used this logic and looked again online, and I came across this camera. At the time it only had one review, and I can't even remember if it was good or bad or not, but there wasn't very much information on it. It was a new product, but I figured for 50 bucks, let me just take a chance and try it out. So I spent another several hours taking everything apart and swapping out the camera, and the first problem I had is, how was I going to mount the camera to this custom license plate mount like I had before? The new camera came with its own mount, but it was too large and bulky, so I ended up not using it. However, what I did do was I unscrewed the camera that came with the license plate mount, and then I just basically glued the new camera to the plastic mount from the old camera. It ended up working out perfectly. I put everything back together and gave it a test, and wow, I was impressed. It was so much wider field of view compared to the old one. The parking lines are adjustable within the camera itself. So there's actually a remote control that comes with the camera, and it is a wired remote, so you do need to put in this little splitter and kind of run a second cable, but it's not too bad because you're only using this temporarily. But this actually allows you to adjust a lot of different things within the camera. You can change different fields of view, you can have a split picture, you can obviously move around the parking lines, which is what I did. And I was just very impressed with all the customization and the picture quality of this camera. Now there's only really two downsides I've found with this camera. The first of which is it doesn't have the 4 LEDs like the first camera did, so the nighttime performance isn't as good, but it's good enough. The other problem is there is a very slight delay from when you put it into reverse to when the picture actually shows up. And I think that's just because there's so much going on within this camera, it kind of takes a second to boot up. However, once it's loaded, the picture's not laggy at all, it's very safe to use. So all in all, especially with this second camera now, I'm very pleased with the setup. The picture quality is very clear, it's very bright, I haven't had any issues with it. The field of view is much wider, it makes it very easy to back up and parallel park now. The mirror itself has been performing very well. The auto-dimming function I think actually is a little bit faster than the factory mirror. And the compass and temperature display are nice to have as well. So that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer. And as always, please like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.